right, guys. What do you all want to talk about tonight? So, one of the things that is very special about the Favor Greenville group is that we are 100% honest with each other. It's 100% complete transparency, and in that spirit, I want to tell y'all something. I'm completely unprepared tonight. I typically come in here and I kind of have a presentation chosen, and I sort of have in my mind. I've been traveling a lot, had a lot going on, and so I kind of came in without a specific topic. So in that regard, does anybody have any certain area that they want to talk about? Anything on their mind? I'll go over some of the basics. We'll talk about what is substance use disorder, what is addiction, that kind of thing. But any area that I can help people with that you feel like you want to focus on tonight?
I would like to hear from other parents what they feel after their child has left their sphere of influence. Some of the emotions and the initial, maybe there's different stages you go through. Is that a reasonable thing?
So let me see. So the question, once a person, when you say sphere of influence, you mean when they leave your geographic area, when they leave your house, when they move away?
You told them they had to leave, they've gone, they're
Okay.
away, and now you're left with, I'm left with my feelings. So I
Okay.
want to know has anybody else, what do you feel?
All right, so,
And along those lines, how do you deal with not knowing if they're okay?
okay. All right. So let me reframe the question or sort of talk it through a little bit. So you have a situation where a person is, they're using substances, it gets out of control. Maybe you're trying to deal with it. They're still living at your house, or at least they're in the same area. You start to set boundaries. I can't deal with this anymore. This isn't going to work. They leave the house, which is something you made a decision you had to do that. So that's a good thing. They're doing what you need them to do, and then they're gone. And how do you deal with the fallout from all of that? So the first thing is that you, just to validate what you've done, the idea of setting boundaries and saying somebody needs to leave the house, we've talked about that a lot in here. That's a necessary thing. There's no, when it comes to things like guilt or the second guessing yourself, should I have done this, should I have done that, that's going to be there, but that's not part of the equation. You have a right to set boundaries and live in your house the way that you want to live in your house. You don't have to take care of anybody in active addiction who are, kind of doing that. So the first thing we would say is, let's try to confront that type of thinking, okay? Does anyone else want to share from the group in terms of their experience, if they've gone through that, where they've asked somebody to move on, what that was like, and in your words, are there stages to that? Anybody have that experience? Linda? Linda? Go ahead.
I had that experience, and our son was gone for 6 months, and it's nerve-wracking. I mean, because in our situation, I knew who he was, but it wasn't a good situation. And, we would stay in touch, but, I mean, I don't know what to add, except that it's extremely nerve-wracking.
So, obviously, incredibly, frustrating, anxiety-ridden. You're fearful.
Yes.
What'd you say, Linda?
Fearful.
Full of fear. So one of the things we have to acknowledge is there's a completely 100% natural, normal, psychological reaction to this situation that is almost impossible to escape. It's very, very difficult for anyone to ask their child to leave, or their husband for that matter, or wife, or whatever the situation might be, and for them not to go through the fear, the anxiety, that kind of thing. I suppose that happens for some folks, but the idea that it's easy and you're just going to be good, that's not going to happen.
But that's what I thought would happen.
Who told you that?
My own brain.
Okay, all right. Nobody in here told you that, though, did they? Okay.
But I have set another boundary just to maybe help her. I went Saturday to find them and found them, and they're living in the woods in a tent. And I said, okay, here's the deal, because she, went a little crazy. And I said, here's the deal. If I don't hear from you in 3 days, for 3 days solid, I'm calling the police, I'm filing a missing persons report, and I will tell them where I saw you last.
Okay.
There's 2 signs, no trespassing, no loitering, $1,000 fine, or
Yeah.
jail. Those are your choices.
Yeah.
Contact me every 3 days, or,
Yeah, so you took another action in addition to that, other
because I
than
got so
just,
scared after not hearing from her
Right.
for 4 or 5 days.
right. So that's a little bit different than living with the feeling. You took action around the feeling, which is always an option. In some cases, taking action isn't necessarily the best idea. In some cases, people have tried to do the outreach, they've tried to contact people, they've tried to find people, they can't find people. Sometimes you can't do anything other than sit in it. Go ahead.
It's almost like you have this thing up here about addiction, it's almost similar that for the last, in my case, it's been 6 months, I was almost, the whole episode of it took over my life and my thoughts and my emotions and my every waking minute.
Yeah.
It was always on my mind, so in a way that is kind of an addiction.
Yeah, it's an obsession for
And
sure.
now, all of a sudden, he's gone, and even the dog is walking around missing him,
Yeah.
It's like, so am I addicted to that whole thing that happened to me, and now I'm feeling off, nobody else, do you understand what
No,
I'm
so there's absolutely,
saying?
just to reframe the question, especially
You
for the
miss
folks.
them, but you don't want them there.
Yeah, like so just for the folks on especially for the folks on Facebook real quick. So there is this process of, a dysfunctional situation.
Yeah.
Being familiar, it's still familiar to you. This happens all the time. You'll hear people talk about it all the time. You're familiar with it, you know how it works, it's predictably bad. Then all of a sudden it goes away and it becomes incredibly uncomfortable. And part of that is, you got to remember, part of that at a real basic level is just the roles that you were in. You've been living this way for so long. In a way, perhaps it is like addiction, where we talk about how the brain changes. There's never been any studies saying that a person who living in a codependent or an enabling situation go through the same type of brain changes. But from a habit standpoint, absolutely. From a I got used to this standpoint, absolutely. That kind and I could completely understand how if somebody left the house, even though on one hand you're like, this is the right thing to do, I can breathe, there's no conflict tonight, there's no drama tonight, it's still that drama is not there and it's going to leave a void. And that's why a lot of times people will reverse their ground. That's why a lot of times people will make another decision where they'll kind of say, they'll have buyer's remorse. I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I wouldn't have told them to leave, because it feels so weird. It feels so strange. Now the good news with that, just like a person who's recovering from substance use, is that does change over time. You can become much more comfortable with this. Not that you're ever going to be okay with it, but you can get to a point where you start to think of it different. The experience isn't as, if it was at a 10 in terms of anxiety and discomfort, maybe it comes down to a 5, maybe it comes down to a 6, where you're kind of like okay and you sort of move through it. But I want to validate what you're experiencing. Absolutely. I think that's why people kick people out, let them back in, kick people out, let them back in. We've talked about that in here before, that the most important part of setting a boundary is making sure you're going to be able to follow through on the boundary because of this, because of how difficult it is to actually stick to that. It's the devil right? Versus this unknown thing, what's going to happen, I kick him out, it's the right thing to do. That's why when people say to parents or to spouses, just kick him out. Just kick him out. You shouldn't have anything to do with it. Practice tough love, just kick him out. That's why it's a silly thing to say to somebody, as if it's a decision like that. Where it's kind of like, that easy. It's never that easy. And so if you feel comfortable with the decision, the question then becomes, how do you stick to it? Because the feelings aren't going to go away. Do you guys get that? Yes, sir.
So, we had to kick our son out. But honestly, I slept the best that night that I've slept in a long time.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden that stress was removed. The
Yeah.
doors are now open in the house. My wife's not living in fear anymore. And kids are resourceful. Well, we found that out. They got a network.
Yeah.
And he found friends that would take him in. Now, granted, he's gone through all those friends now. And so, we found him in a Walmart parking lot. That's where he was living. Apparently there's a community there.
Yeah. That's
And,
where my daughter
but
is.
when I went to pick him up to take him to a place, they'll say, hey, see you, Joe. It's like, they know each other. But I tell you what, that night that we kicked him out, that's the best I've slept in a long time. Now, that's not DNA of a mom is different, maybe a little bit than the DNA of a dad, maybe. It's like, you know, moms are nurturing. He's my buddy. He'll always be my little buddy. My daughter's my heart. So, you
And
know,
it was cold
it's
and
tough.
rainy Friday.
But
So you're gonna have
money back.
so the factors that are gonna trigger you, and when it's gonna get worse is when it's cold and rainy. It's gonna get worse for you whenever you watch the news and there's information on there about, you know, drug addiction, and there's information on there about overdose deaths, and anything that's gonna remind you of the person is gonna trigger it, that kind of thing. A couple other ideas or pointers that you throw out there in terms of how do you deal with that when you make that decision. This is when I think, especially early on, it's critical to have somebody to talk to through that process, and come to this group and ask the question and know that you're sort of right where you should be in this process. If you were sitting there right now and it's your son, right, and you had told him to leave and you were kind of like, I'm good to go, it's not bothering me at all, I would be like a little concerned. I'd be thinking maybe you and I need to meet afterward and I need to get you some help.
No,
Because
that's how I initially felt I would be, is like cut, gone, no, you know, move on from it, but.
yeah.
I'm realizing that there's many more layers, and the other thing, do you ever feel like you could have done more?
Do you ever feel like you could have done more? Does anybody? Yes.
Is
Or
that
done something different.
Yes.
common?
So it's a
I'm just, I mean, he was high when he left, I know he was, but
Yeah.
I'm still feeling like, God, what, couldn't I have done more?
so it's normal to have fear. It's normal to have guilt. It's normal to have doubt. It's normal to think like, could I have done more? That kind of thing. You know, did I try everything I possibly could? That's why a lot of times when it comes to actually making a move to kick people out, a lot of times you'll hear people talk that they have to try everything before they can get there. They have to actually try rehab, or they have to try different interventions, or they have to try different conversations. Very few people go from 0 to 60 in terms of making that decision. We recommend that you look into all the options, you check it out, and
He wouldn't participate.
yeah, so you try. You try. And at the end of the day, you can't control them in that regard. But let me ask a question. So let's pretend that your son isn't having any problems, okay? And he's at home, and he decides that he's going to go, and he's going to join the Army, and he's going to go off to Japan or wherever he's going to go to serve. Would you miss him then? Linda, you get that? Like, you get the question? Of course you would.
Because he's still gone.
He's gone. So there's a natural part of this that's absolutely unavoidable that we pathologize. Do you guys know what I mean by pathologize? People, parents, and loved ones, you think you're going crazy when you're not actually going crazy. You're having a natural human response to a situation. You're having a natural human response to, better yet, let me ask you this. If he was diagnosed with cancer and he was laying in Greenville Hospital right now receiving some kind of chemotherapy that wasn't working, would you be worried and upset and unable to sleep at night and crying yourself to sleep? So it's a complete, but where addiction's concerned, you all have been told it's a moral issue. You all have been told that it's a behavior. You probably think that like part of it's your responsibility. So you say to yourself, should I be upset?
And you can't talk to anybody.
And you can't talk to anybody about it. So absolutely you should be upset. It makes all the sense in the world. The question then becomes, where do we go from here, right? Like, so what steps do we take from here? You took a step the other day where you went out and you found your daughter, right?
Yeah, she's
And-
with
And so you go and you said you went from I'm going to step back to like, okay, if you do this, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to call the police and I'm going to file a missing persons report. So there are,
I made sure the boyfriend was there, so
Yeah.
he's accountable as well.
yeah, so you could start to always look at other options, guys, right? It's not the door opens both ways. You can, but you don't want to just get to a situation where they show up at your house one night and knock on the door and you reverse field. That's when it gets bad. That's when it gets really, really tough because again, we've talked about this in here. What happens then? The message is that you don't mean what you say. Yeah, that mom doesn't mean what she says. Yes, ma'am.
Using the analogy of a terminal disease or a potentially terminal disease, I found that when I accepted the fact that my son might well die from this, accepting and, you know, being glad about it are different, but
Yeah.
I had a lot more ability to live my own life.
Yeah.
And hope that things would, you know, we took a lot of steps, but
Yeah.
the point was, he could die, and I had to face that, and then,
So I don't know if you guys could hear the comment.
And then what?
But that was part of my Saturday. I wanted to make sure she was alive. Because I read all these things about you go and you find them and
Yep. What did you say?
Well, you dropped off there and you said you accepted it, and then
It got a little bit better.
how did you react to?
go on with
Well,
your life.
how was it, what was the feeling behind it got better? That's what I'm,
well, better is a loose term. But, I think it's coming to terms with something that is inevitable. You've lost people, right, and you know that they're dying, and you get ready. And still sometimes there's hope and sometimes there's not. So I think it's that balance between, for me, I know that sounds really like a terrible mother, but
No.
No.
It,
It sounds realistic.
you're right on. Yep.
once I know that he
how
can't,
you got to that place in your mind and in your heart.
my son had a stroke early on in this, and it was really possible that he would die. And as soon as I realized that, I
You were able to let it
I
go.
was able to, I kind of went numb for a while, but after I stopped being numb, I mean, it wasn't easy or anything, it just seemed like it made sense to me.
And
he
typically,
knows that I feel that way, so,
typically it's through those type of experiences where people come to a deeper level of realization. If you guys couldn't hear the comment was, in her case, in her personal journey, she went through some things and experienced some things with her son where she got to a point where she got in touch with that this is a terminal disease that could end with the worst possible result. And how do people get there? That was your question. How do you wind up getting there? Well, I'll tell you, like it's first of all, a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't, and not everybody has to. Not everybody has to. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But when people do get there, it's usually because of their experiences. Exactly what you said. There's usually some kind of like hospitalization, or they just start to, the evidence becomes so overwhelming that it becomes much more real than maybe it was early on. Whenever, you know, you sort of thought that a person could die from this disease, but you actually hadn't seen it. So that's kind of what it goes on. But let's go back and let's really, really get in touch with something. There's no right or wrong way to do this. So you have a lot of stress. Think about, like, and this is how, from a psychological perspective, kind of like stress, frustration, negative feelings, that kind of thing, we sort of all have a tipping point. Some of the things you've heard, you're going to blow your stack. How many people have heard that phrase, right?
Go ballistic.
That's because willpower and our ability to control our emotions, it weakens the more we control our emotions. Are you following me? So literally the willpower muscle is like any other muscle. The more you use it, the more tired you get. The harder it is to use it again. Okay? So you guys are managing all these negative feelings. You're managing all this worry. You're managing all this anxiety. And all day while you're doing it, you're chipping away at your willpower muscle. One of the things that's very important is don't lay something else on top of there to manage. Do not tell yourself that there's a right or wrong way to do this thing. And if you ever have a thought like, I should feel this way, or I should feel that way, or I shouldn't feel this way, you got to get that out of your head, because you're all going to experience this completely different. There is no right or wrong way to do this, and there is no cookie cutter solution to this particular problem. And I feel like that's exceedingly important, because you have enough frustration and fear and worry and real things to worry about, let alone create this own scenario in your mind. So if that's where you're at, now how do you get rid of any thought? Like, how do you manage negative thoughts? Anybody have any ideas in that regard? Let's shift. So now we've established that you're going to have these negative thoughts, that they're not going to be rational, that they're not going to be based on reality. Are you not buying what I'm saying?
Yeah, I am.
I'm a trained observer of human behavior, and I'm kind of...
No, I'm really listening, and so
Okay.
how you get rid of the negatives, you replace it with something good.
Okay, so first I want to get you guys in touch with the idea that there's no right or wrong way to deal with this. Can we all buy that premise? We all can buy the premise that there's no right or wrong way to deal with it. All right, so when it comes to the shoulds, and I could have done more, I should have done more, or this was a wrong thing, or I'm feeling wrong about this, how do you deal with that? So there's a theory or an idea around that, and it's based on cognitive behavioral therapy, where thoughts lead to feelings, lead to actions. So it's actually a thought that'll start this process, which will create like a feeling that can become very, very difficult to get rid of, and that'll create like actions. And so let me give you an example. So let's say I try to text my daughter and I don't get her. This is a lower level example, and I don't get her. All right. And the thought is, I couldn't get a hold of her. She's out doing something she shouldn't be. And I probably even run with it further. She's out with this person. She's out with that person. She's using this. She's using that. I go there, right? The thought leads to what? Worry, anxiety, fear.
And then you see the news about someone ODing.
Well, that triggers it too. And then I what? Call her and get her on the phone, and what do? Light her up. And she says her phone was dead. Are you following me? So thoughts lead to feelings, lead to action. So the idea is to try to identify the thought and catch yourself when you're in the thought and try to dispute the thought with different information. Yeah, maybe, so in your case, it's going to be a lot, and in your case too, it's going to be a lot of worst case scenario thinking of they're not at home and they're out with so-and-so, you know who she's with, it's going to be bad. You're going to see something about overdoses on 60 Minutes, and all that. You're going to have to fight against the things you don't know. You're going to have to try to, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to be it's going to be very, very tough. You have to probably do it over and over again and tell yourself, like, yeah. Takes a lot of repetition too. In a lot of effort, and some people would do things like journaling. They would write about it. Some people would, talking about it can help. Talking to other people about it can help. If you know and you learn about, substance use disorder, and you start to understand a little bit about what's going on with a person's brain, and you understand that it's different than just having a party, and they're probably like in an obsessive state of thinking themselves, and they're not necessarily capable of rational thinking at that point, perhaps, that can kind of help. I've known it. That's helped a lot with parents who are angry. If you're angry and you start to learn what you're dealing with, that can get a little bit better. And so education can help. What other pieces of advice from parents regarding how to deal with this uncertainty, or it could be a spouse, how to deal with this anxiety? Identifying that worst case fear and trying to look it in the eyes is a very important part of the process. And the worst case fear can be different for different people. And it's not always death. It's not always death. And sometimes you have to be willing to kind of acknowledge what it is that your personal demon is, the personal thing that's sort of bothering the parent or bothering the family member. So I'm going to give you an example of that. I'm going to tell you, kind of, and by the way, if you're in here, this is a family recovery group. So if you're in here and you're kind of in recovery, you're more than welcome to be here, but this isn't really, this is more like listening if you're not the family member. This is for family members. So in my case,
You want to start the
what happened?
sign-in sheet?
Oh, let's start the sign-in sheet. We have a sign-in sheet. If you give us your name and email, we will send you information and bother you. So my wife, now this is different. This is a spouse, okay? So this is a spouse dealing with this. My wife, and we talked about this. She says it. She accepted the fact that I could die anytime and was okay with it. What she was not okay with was having to, that she would have no place for her and the kids to live. This is deep stuff, guys.
You have to really get in touch.
You got to get in touch with what it is your personal issue with this.
Way more complicated than I ever thought.
This is much more complicated. It's not a black and white issue. So sometimes it is death. A lot of times with parents to kids, it's death. I'll be honest with you. A lot of times with parents to kids, it's the worst case scenario. But I'll tell you what, it can also be all kinds of other things. It could be jail.
Well, or there's that, what if she gets pregnant?
Then now you can get creative. What if she gets pregnant? Right? And you can really,
All these grandparents.
you can certainly walk down in this, but whatever it is, your personal hang up, for lack of a better term, or for your personal issue with this, you have to be able to like think about it. And have you guys ever had a situation, and maybe it's not even related to addiction, but have you ever had an experience where there's something you're dealing with and it'll pop in your mind and you'll push it out right away? It's kind of like, I can't even go there.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things that you might have to go there. And maybe who do you go there with becomes part of the question, and how do you get that done? But can you guys relate to what I'm talking about? You can have this thought, you like, I'm just not even going to think about that. Maybe this is one of those ones where you need to get with some people and talk about it, that kind of thing. You can talk about it in group. You might want to get one-on-one with somebody. If you think, and here's the thing, why would you want to do that? Why would it be important to talk through that and face it? If you feel like that fear is controlling you, then you really want to take a look at it. If it's not controlling you, then that's okay. What do I mean by controlling you? If the fear is making you make bad decisions, if the fear is making you compromise your own values, if the fear is making you allow the person to kind of take advantage of you, then you want to take a look at it. There are some people who will still do what they need to do even though they're in fear. So really at the end of the day, this is about whether or not you do what you need to do and how you deal with it. And so in the case where you've asked somebody to leave the house, what would be an example of fear controlling the situation? Well, you'd let them in every time they showed back up. Or you'd go out and find them, and instead of setting a boundary around the police, you would say, get in the car, I'm taking you home. Any other questions or comments about that part of the process? Yes.
Well, I have something a little, maybe going in a different direction, but I can empathize with everybody. My son's 30 now. He's been 16 years alcohol and drugs. Remanded to Solutions Recovery for 1 year, and he's doing incredible. Okay, he's doing the program. He's got a good job, and he's also getting involved with a new church planning. So I wanted to ask you and others. Things are going real good now, and usually they don't last this long. He's got another 11 months, and I'm saying to myself, the one thing that I don't like so far is he's already hooking up with an old friend, and the old friend is an old party buddy. So, and I'm saying, what do I communicate? I mean, he's well on his track, and he's doing great. My question to you and the group would be, what are some of the things, other than the first thing that popped in my mind, try to redirect him a little from this friend, or at least let it out there that he may not be the best person.
So the question is, guys, is if you see your loved one kind of making some obvious decisions or sort of going down a pathway that you've been educated on and you just know is not necessarily a really good idea.
How do you approach it?
How do you approach it? And so, what do you do or what do you say? That kind of thing. Different schools of thought in that regard. I'm just going to tell you kind of like what I think. I think it's okay for parents and for spouses to say something. Some people would tell you stay out of it. It's none of your business. You work on your recovery. Let the person work on his recovery. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's okay to kind of say, here's what I see, this is what I observe. What you don't want to do is try to control it. You don't want to, there's a fine line between reminding somebody and nagging somebody. Do you guys know what I mean by that? That fine line where it's, hey, Joni, I'm worried about you, to like where I'm just driving her crazy and I'm driving her further away, and then all of a sudden he isolates from you and now he's not talking to you, that kind of thing. But I'll go on the record, and I've said this, to people who are looking for recovery and to families. I think if we say it's a family issue, right, then family members need to be able to ask questions. They need to. Now, a couple other things about that. So why would a person get defensive? Let's think about the recovering person. So I'm in there like 60 days. I'm in there 30 days or whatever. I'm doing everything I can.
They get blamed for something they're not doing.
It could be that. They could feel like they're getting accused of something that they're not doing, and they could be like, just kind of like, trust me, and in their mind they could be saying that.
How can you?
What's that?
How can you? I just brought my husband to detox.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yep.
I don't know what to expect. I don't know.
So her comment is, hell no, I don't trust him.
No.
Okay, well, you should trust him.
Okay, hey, can you let us do this? Okay, so her comment is hell no, I don't trust him. So let's go back to why he would be defensive. So he would be defensive because what are the options? And this is just sort of how it works. One, he could be defensive just because he's doing the right thing and he's not in a frame of mind of hearing it. That's absolutely a possibility. Two, he could be defensive because he knows it's the wrong thing to do, and you've pushed a button. Okay. Three, he could be defensive because he's already doing the wrong thing. But here's the problem: you're not going to know. So this is where you have to ask yourself: can I even have the conversation? Am I even going to be able to have this conversation with my husband or with my son and have it not turn into a fight? That kind of thing. So I'm in recovery 18 years. I'm in recovery. I was addicted to opioids, all right? I was addicted to alcohol way before that, but it was prescription pain pills that brought me to my knees. I was always defensive. I was always full of shit. I was always pushing back on any kind of accusation until I got in recovery.
More so with some people than others?
Let me just kind of finish that thought. So, and once I got in recovery and I started to do the right thing, I didn't care who asked me anything. It's like if anybody ever refuses a drug test, nobody in the history of the world has refused to take a drug test if they were clean. So I want to tell you, if we're doing the right thing, we want to pee in cups all day. But if we're using, we're not going to. You follow what I'm saying? So a lot of times, your instincts are right on. But the question becomes not like who's right, who's wrong, that kind of thing. Should I trust my husband? Should I not trust my husband? The thing becomes it's really a question of how much conflict do I want to have, and what can I actually expect to come out of this, right? If I ask the question and he gives me an answer, am I going to accept it? Or am I going to push this? And if I'm going to push it, then am I ready for all the consequences and everything that's going to go along with it? Understanding that at the end of the day, you cannot actually control the person. So all you can do is throw the information out there and see what happens, but you can't actually make your husband do the right thing. Now, does everyone get that part? Because there's one other part of this that I want to talk about. But does everybody understand it's okay to ask the question? So let's talk about, yes, Carol.
Should we wait until the person is not using to ask the question about that?
Oh yeah, you should always try to talk to the person whenever they're not under the influence, when they're not high or anything like that. It's real easy to tell when people are high, and so you want to try to not go there. And just wait till the next day, have the conversation when the person's not high. Did you have a question?
I did, in reference to this gentleman's question. If you decide to go there, what would you suggest as a way to approach that?
Okay,
How would you-
this is a great kind of course of questions. I really wish I would have maybe had this put into a presentation, because I feel let's camp out here for a minute for me. What we're talking about tonight is what should we do and how do we do it? Does that sound kind of like the theme of tonight? What should we do and maybe how do we deal with the feelings around that? And so another thing is how do we actually have the conversation? So the first part is, do you want to have the conversation? The second part is, how do you have the conversation? And we have a phrase that we say in here that kind of guides us, and it's mean what you say what you mean, but don't say it mean. So there are some basic principles. The first thing we would do is say, take some time and get real clear in your mind on what you think is going on and what the message is that you want to convey. Don't shoot from the hip. So it isn't like if the person comes in the door and you smell alcohol in his breath and you're like, you were drinking and you've been drinking for 3 weeks, and you want to actually think it through, and you want to say, what is my concern here? Mean what you say what you mean, so get it clear in your mind, and then communicate it to the person. And focus only on that issue. Exceedingly important. I've taken some time tonight, and I've talked about those of us who are addicted. I'm about to talk about family members. My wife's not on Facebook, so I can get away with this. Here's what y'all need to do a little bit different. If you're worried about, if I go home tonight, my wife is worried about the fact I might have gotten high tonight, she does not need to talk about the time in 1986 when we were at the Def Leppard concert and I left without her, okay? That has nothing, I didn't do that. I really didn't do that. Like, people in the back row are like, oh, he left her at a Def Leppard concert. No, so you don't need to be talking about all the garbage that was going on in the past. That has nothing to do with your objective for today. And families, a lot of times, are so frustrated and so angry and so upset about all the things that have gone on that when you start talking about, I was worried that you used on Monday, you start talking about all the things that have happened. And so that's the second part, say what you mean. Get clear in your mind, but then stick to that agenda. And I got to tell you something, you will have a hard time with that. And they will have a hard time, you will have a hard time with them not getting you off on other topics. Because I want to tell you, like, whenever you learn how to be a drug addict, they take you to drug addict class. And some of you aren't laughing, and you actually think that's true. Some of you are sitting in the audience right now going, oh my God, they got drug addict class. So when they take you to drug addict class, one of the things that they teach you is if you're ever being accused of anything, change the subject. And it's better to fight about something that has nothing to do with this than have a calm conversation about the actual subject at hand. So not only will you have this tendency to go off on a rabbit trail, the person will want to get you on a rabbit trail. They'll want to get you talking about all these other things. So some people would say write it down. Like you'll hear people talk about having like a note card and sort of like, here are my bullet points. I'm worried that he's using because of X, Y, and Z. So mean what you say what you mean, but don't say it mean. In other words, you don't have to yell at the person. You don't have to threaten the person. You don't have to get angry about it. Your goal is to try to convey this as matter of fact as possible. Yes?
How would you approach the idea of, I notice you're hanging out with somebody who you used to use with?
Yeah.
How do you go?
So her question was, how do you approach the idea that the person is hanging out with somebody that you shouldn't be hanging out with? Do you want me to do it? Okay, I'll actually just do it. And maybe, should I do both roles? I'll be the person doing it and the addict? That one might be fun. No, yes?
Should there be a distinction of whether that person is still actively using or if they're in recovery also?
No, because the issue is I'm worried about who you're hanging out with. So this is a great question, though. So that's a great question. So get clear in your mind on what the target is. So the target is, are you hanging out with the right people? That could be an issue whether you're in recovery or not, right? I need to know, is this good for your recovery? Is this good for your health? That kind of thing. And I think the conversation should be the same whether the person's in recovery or in active addiction. Because remember, if the goal is mean what you say what you mean, but don't say it mean, the urgency of the conversation might be different depending on the circumstances. But the actual conversation itself, it isn't about how do you handle addiction. It's about how do you communicate with people who don't necessarily want to hear you. Like, think about other people who don't want to hear us, coworkers, that kind of thing. How do you communicate? And so that's really what you're trying to tap into. So if you're worried about somebody who might be hanging out, so the first thing is you got to find a time whenever you're calm, and then you want to approach them and say, I've been learning about this. I've been learning about this. Can I ask you a question? One of the things is if you ask another human being, can I ask you a question? Most people will say yes. And it improves the results then because they've just given you permission. Even if you're going to ask the question, ask if you can ask the question. Okay? So can I ask you a question? He says yes. What's up? What's up? What's up? How old is the person?
He's 30.
Okay, that's young enough to be. What's up?
Dude.
All right, so you ask the question. Can I ask you a question? He says yes. What's up? And you say, listen, I'm not, and I would front load it like this. I am not in this to try to run your life. I'm not trying to run your recovery. I am your father. I am concerned, and I just need to ask you about Joey. Seems like he's been coming around more. And then, let him say what he's got to say. That's probably where maybe he gets defensive. And at the end, like after he kind of goes through it, just simply say, like, look, man, I've been going to favor. I've been talking to people. I've been hearing about this. They say it's risky. You know, I'm your dad, I love you, I just needed to ask. And that's it. Do not follow it up with, I don't want to hear you talking to that kid anymore. Do not follow it up with, like, you're not telling me the truth. Do not follow it up with, you always do this. Do you guys get that? You know,
How do you not do that?
so you do it because you want to stay out of your emotions. It's a great question. How do you not do that? How do you not resort to saying those kind of things? Because you know what happens as soon as you say those kind of things. What happens? It turns into a whole nother thing then. It's no longer about Joey and whether or not he should be hanging out with Joey. It's now kind of a back and forth, arguing, fighting, different things getting said. How do you prevent that? You've got to, well, first of all, I'll ask the group, how do you prevent yourself when you're talking to your loved one, how do you prevent it from turning into you saying things that you shouldn't say and turning it into an argument? Yes, sir.
Be prepared.
So you think about it beforehand.
Yeah.
Be prepared. Joni.
I always did that until I started coming to Baker
Yeah.
and learning tools to use to not do it
Yes.
and to be more educated.
Yeah, so learn about it, become prepared, learn about the issue, learn about what you're dealing with, that you're not just, you know, it's not just somebody trying to ruin your day. Who else had their hand up? Linda?
Well, I was gonna say, it seems to work for me that when we're in the car and I'm not facing him,
Oh, that's a great idea.
driving,
Captive audience.
Yeah,
casually, trying to have a conversation.
I think that's a really good idea. So pick the place. Sometimes while you're driving down the road, you're looking ahead, they're sitting there, you can get away with asking some questions. We'll go right to you, Frank, but somebody had their hand up here. Yes?
I was just gonna say, sometimes it works for me to remind myself, well, first of all, prepare, kind of do the note card thing, just kind of practice, what are you gonna say, how are you gonna say it, where are you gonna stop?
Yeah.
But it's helped me to realize that I may have a lot to say, but I don't have to say it all right now.
Right.
And if I want to, I can go back later and say those
Right.
things, but I can't unsay them.
Right. Frank?
You're just liable to hear, I'm trying to help Joe.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the things. Frank said he might say, I'm just trying. You could hear all kinds of creative reasons why he's hanging out with Joey, yes.
Keith, my son, I have had this conversation with him, and he said, well, Mom, he needs help too.
Yeah.
So, and he was kind of proud of the fact that he was trying to mentor somebody else. Now, at that time, I thought it was sincere, but there may be some.
It may have been
Might not
sincere.
be sincere.
And all you're doing is, you got to remember, you're not going to make or break the person's recovery with that, and you're not trying to control the person, and you're not trying to make him make a different decision. You're literally just kind of taking information that you've got, and you're sort of saying, here's what I've been told, and a couple things that I would recommend in order to avoid it blowing up is be real realistic on what you're going to get, right? So go into the situation understanding what your objective is. Your objective is not to, like, the person all of a sudden is going to, like, say, yes, I get it. I won't hang out with that person anymore. It's not going to go down like that. Your objective is what? To plant a seed, maybe get the person thinking a little bit, move the needle on recovery a little bit. It's interesting, guys, when you look at, like, human behavior, even if you take addiction off the table, when you talk about any kind of human behavior, there are some interesting facts on how, and it makes you wonder how we, like, live together. One is people, especially people who care about other people, have this tendency to want to correct their behavior. Well, control is like the negative way, but what they're doing is they call it the righting reflex. So Frank's doing something wrong. Hey, Frank, you got to tie your shoes. You're going to fall, if you don't tie your shoes. You got to put your coat. It's all that stuff that, like, let me tell this person what to do. What's interesting is that those of us on the receiving end of that have a natural tendency to push back on it. So we have this kind of two-way street, especially where families are concerned, where I care about you, I want to say something, but the person, we don't want to hear it. So you want to avoid those speeches, and you want to avoid those accusations, and you want to, here's the other thing. When you know it's happening, I'll give you something to say when you know the person's using. Because make no mistake, your loved one will go to treatment, they will go to jail, they will have near-death experiences, and they will continue to use. That's what this is, okay? When they're using, and you know they're using, say to them, I know you're using, you know I know you're using. And that's all we need to say about this, okay? That's all we're going to say about it. You're acknowledging the fact. You're just acknowledging what's going on. Just being open and honest about it is very important. Now, then you have to get into your own head on what are my boundaries and what can I put up with and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that parents really and loved ones get into, have you ever experienced this where you like want to know whether they're using or not? And you want to know what's going on. Most of the time you're going to know. You can kind of tell by the way they look, and you can tell by the way they're acting. And you could just simply let them know you know what's going on, but you don't have to. It doesn't have to turn into a fight. You want to try to avoid that combative stuff, because what? You're just going to exhaust yourself. You're never going to talk somebody when they're in this state of mind. You are not going to argue them into recovery. Does that make sense? You're not going to argue anybody into recovery when they're like this. You might have been able to do it before. Somebody might have been able to get to me earlier on before I kind of crossed that line. But when I was in this state of mind, the only thing that worked was, clear boundaries, my wife didn't have the benefit of a group like this where they coached her through it. She was very, what's the word? She did not say what she means, mean what you say, but don't say it means. She said what she means, and she said it mean. And I fought back for years, and we went round and round, but it didn't do any good. It didn't do any good. I say this all the time, and people sometimes think I'm making it up, but things started to change between me and my wife when she stopped accusing me of things and she wouldn't fight with me, because it freaked me out. I was so used to the verbal combat, and when she kind of stopped saying something, I just got really, really like uncomfortable, and I knew something was changing. Right? So mean what you say what you mean. Pick and choose your time. Pick and choose your place. Maybe being in the car is a place to do it. Have really realistic expectations on what's going to happen. Breathe. Keep it simple. Try to stick to what you're talking about. Understand you're not going to talk them into anything, and get real clear in your mind on what your goal is. Now, yes, sir.
I like the quote, a wise man once said nothing. That helps me with my son that's an addict and
Yeah.
my son that's not an addict.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh, I've learned sometimes it's better just to shut up.
Yeah. Don't do something, just stand there. Right? Just wait a minute. Yes.
And one thing I like to use is, I recognize that you're using or you're doing some whatever, and I don't know how I'm going to handle it yet, but I am going to be there.
Yeah, I think that it's real important, and you got to be careful who you're talking to and stuff like that, because the other thing that's weird that goes on is, where addiction is concerned, there's also a lot of armchair quarterbacks who you will tell them what's happening. So let's just say, for example, that my wife is dealing with me in my situation. Here I am, I'm using these pills, I'm got in a car accident, all this stuff going down, and this didn't happen, but let's pretend she calls her sister. Or maybe this did happen, and if it didn't, no, I'm just kidding. And let's pretend she calls her sister, and her sister says, well, just throw him out. What are you doing? Don't put up with that. You don't, like, there's no productivity in that. You're not going to get anything out of that. You want to get around people who are going to kind of talk you through it, and you need to be around people who are probably going to listen more than they're going to tell you what to do. You're wrestling with it already. If your loved one is dealing with this, you're wrestling with what you should do already. Just like you said, Carol, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with this, but I'm going to do something, right? You're already thinking of it. You know a lot of times instinctually probably what the next step is you need to take. What you need to start figuring out is how do I do that? How do I get the emotional wherewithal to actually follow through? How do I make sure that I'm in a good space psychologically where I'm not just going to get into this revolving door situation? So a lot of times, yes ma'am?
I just have a question on how to respond to something.
Okay, go ahead.
If he says, well, I'll stop using if you get more strict with the kids, or you...
Yeah, that's a good question. So a lot of times, and that'll happen like parent to children, that'll happen spouses, that kind of thing. You know, there'll be a reason why.
I'm stressed.
Yeah, well, but and so I'll make sure we talk afterward. But we got to definitely only because this is a family group. I'd like to get you to where we have the recovery group and get you in that. But at any rate, so and that happened to me. I'll be perfectly honest. It wasn't kids. It was work. 100% true. While I'm standing here, like for years, I wore my situation out because of work, and basically my mom supported that. I've told you the story in here before about my mom and how I would go over to the house and she would undermine everything that just went on. You guys remember that? Dude, you don't have to leave. You can hang.
Yeah, I got boss man on the phone.
Okay, all right. So that was the story that I told, and I'm answering your question. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Go ahead, brother.
And the keys.
Okay. So now, and when it comes to like work, all right, so he's just dealing with this. We can help him too, okay? We're gonna talk afterward. You guys stick around. We'll talk. I want to talk to you about what's going on with your dad too, okay? We can help, ma'am. Listen, we can help. Seriously, this is what we do. We're gonna help, okay? Yeah, if you want. But you know what? Go ahead and sit down. I wanna continue this because I think it's important. What you guys are dealing with, okay? All right. This is what we do, and it's because what your dad's dealing with, guys, and it happened to me. Sometimes with some of these substances, it gets the best of us, and it literally changes our brain. So what happens is it goes and it grabs a hold of us. And I had 3 kids when I went through it, and it's not that he doesn't love you, and it's nothing like that. It's that this is what's going on with his brain, and we can help him with that. One of the things that it's so good that you're here tonight, because one of the things is that you want to understand that, like, using goes beyond any circumstance. It doesn't have anything to do with the kids. It doesn't have anything to do with work. Stress might have contributed to it early, but what happens is that our brains change. So like if you see this, what's going on in this picture is this is a normal brain. And so this is a neurotransmitter called dopamine, okay? And dopamine allows us to feel normal. When we become addicted, it kind of goes away, okay? So what we do is we just wind up finding all kinds of reasons to use, and we just chase it, and that's when we make bad decisions. And so the good news is that this can get better, okay? But it's not necessarily about kids or work or anything like that, but people are going to say it, and like I was saying, it's almost like you don't want to argue about it, you know, because you're not going to talk anyone out of it. And put in whatever it is in that situation, work, kids, my mom's bothering me too much, whatever it might be, it'll raise stress, but it won't be the reason, okay? That kind of thing. So we will help figure that out. You guys are in the right place tonight. How old are you?
14.
14, and how old are you?
9.
Yeah, so when I was 14, so my dad, you know, was addicted. I went through this. I didn't know what was going on. I never went to a group like this. I want to let you know that this can be okay. And I really want you to get, especially you at 14, understand like what's going on with your dad's brain is that, and this isn't because he's a bad person. This is just what happens, okay? And so after we're done, I want to give you a card and some information on how we can help out, and then give you my card and you can give it to him, and we'll help you get this figured out. Is this your first time here?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this his first time here?
Yes.
Okay. Where was he going?
We're leaving now.
Yeah.
He said he's gonna make a phone call.
Okay. All right. So cool. We'll talk to him before we're done. All right. But did that answer your question? So stress can like increase our desire to maybe take something, but it goes beyond that when a person becomes addicted.
And he just said things like, well, if the house was clean and you
Yeah.
were more strict with the kids, then I won't take these pills.
Yeah. So it's moved beyond that. If it was ever that in the beginning, that's not what it is now. It's this. This is real important for you to understand. This is not connected to any conditions. It's not connected to anything that anyone did. This is because his brain is literally telling him, get a hold of it, get a hold of it, get a hold of it. You know, it's not like that. That's not what's happening. And so,
Well, he says that he's always been able to beat everything.
Yeah.
But he can't beat this one
pills, that he's gonna continue to take it until he can beat it.
Yeah, so, and that's where we have to help him, because you can't. You can't help him in that regard. But we have meetings here, we have staff that he can talk to, and maybe we can start talking through that with him. You need to be here and understand what's going on. If anybody else is new, I want to make sure we're all on the same page with this. So what happens is that as you go through these using patterns, guys, it goes from like having fun. People start using for a wide variety of reasons, right? Sometimes it's peer pressure, sometimes it's just pleasure, sometimes, you know, maybe their older brother, mom, dad gave it to them, whatever it is. You start for whatever reason. When you continue to use, so when you use, you kind of flood your brain with dopamine, and that's the pleasure chemical, and it tells you do it again, and if you do that over and over and over again, what will happen to some of us is the brain will shut off the production of dopamine, and then you cannot feel normal. You literally can't feel normal. Dopamine is what allows you to feel contentment. It allows you to feel like when you're hungry and you eat, dopamine is released. Well, imagine not being able to produce it. What that leads to is you're all the time chasing it, and that
How long does it take to clear out?
It takes, it takes maybe 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. It depends on what the substance is. You know, sometimes it takes longer than that. It does clear up for sure. You know, there are other scans that demonstrate that.
So in detox, what do they do? I mean,
It detox what they're.
5 days.
Yeah, great question. So her question was, what do they do in detox? Detox, they're taking care of the physical, medical symptoms. So you also go through physical withdrawal. And in detox, they give you medicine so you don't go through, it's not quite as uncomfortable. But that's all that's going on in detox.
So when he comes home.
So when he comes home, just like what your husband would need to do is he's got to get in a group. He's got to start talking to people individually. Maybe he needs to get a therapist. They're going to make recommendations at
He
detox.
already has one, but.
Okay. So he you know, and work on that stuff and try to get involved in a program. That would be the recommendation. Now we support multiple pathways to recovery, whatever's going to help a person get better. We don't prescribe to any one way of doing it. I will tell you that if you look at the factors that increase the likelihood that a person's going to be okay, being part of a group is one of those. Having an individual person to talk to is one of those. There's also this idea, you know, whatever you're kind of into, prayer, meditation, some kind of routine where you're kind of calming yourself. Exercise helps a person. Trying to eat right. Now, nobody does all of the above, right? Nobody does all of the above. Nobody does it perfectly. We don't care how a person gets better. I have some people who would only come to see me. I have some people who go to a meeting every single day. I know some people who go to meetings multiple times a day. It's very different for different people. What I do know is the recommendation is you don't want to just go home and try to figure it out on your own.
Well, I don't know what to do when he comes home, when I pick him up. How do I act? I mean.
How do you feel like you should act? What would be your gut? Have you ever picked him up from detox before? Okay. So the first thing is he's coming out of detox. You don't have to, it's not your responsibility how he does. Okay, so it's not on you to say the right thing, do the right thing.
Well, I feel like I walk on pins and needles, and
Okay.
any one thing will set me off. I have my cell phone, I just track him. He leaves the house and I track him, I became obsessed.
Yeah.
I took him to the bank, I took everything out of his name.
Yeah.
I thought that would do it. We had an agreement, we'd sell the house and move to our condo.
Yep.
And I'd move my office, I've done everything.
Yeah.
And he hasn't done anything, and I feel like I'm the only one doing everything.
So this is where, okay, so I don't know if everyone could hear what she said. She feels like she's doing everything. She's putting in more work than he is in terms of the recovery. So if you go back to the principles of if you've been behaving in one way for a long, long time and it's produced a certain behavior, the idea would be do something different. Do you guys get that?
I've had a divorce attorney, I don't.
No, do something different in terms of your level. Do you want me just to give you a straight recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, I'll give you a straight recommendation. Pick him up. Don't ask him a bunch of questions, okay? Drive, don't say anything, stop, get something to eat, go ahead and head home. Tell him you were here. I went to a group at Favor. They were telling us what to do and kind of that kind of stuff, and I'd love to know what your plan is. You say that to him. I'd love to know what your plan is. And if he tells you I'm going to go to a meeting tonight, or I'm calling my therapist when I get home and setting up an appointment, or I have an appointment for Friday, you say great, okay? If he says, what are you talking about? I'm not going to do anything, then you say, well, my understanding is that that's not how this works. You know, that this isn't going to, and that's all you say.
Well, when I talked to him.
Wait. Can you agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, so good. And so then that's all you do. Now go ahead. What was the next part?
Well, so when I talked to him tonight, I told him I was coming here.
Yeah.
And I was gonna get a schedule for him, and he said just not Thursday, because he's coming home Thursday, and I said, I get it.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I said that you have meetings here that we could come together.
Yes. What you want to start doing is working on, because if you listen to what you talked about feeling like you're trying to control it and you're trying to do everything. So what you want to do is you want to start working on and backing off a little bit. But that doesn't mean it's not okay to ask questions. It doesn't mean it's not okay to grab a schedule when you're done here. You know, you just start trying to work on sort of stepping back a little bit. And also you got to try to like make sure you're not driving yourself crazy. So maybe you take the tracker off the phone. Maybe you don't. You'd have to think some of that through and kind of like try to ask yourself what would make you feel better. But the general principle would be to change kind of like what you're doing and sort of back off and go the other direction a little bit. And I would also let them know that you're going to keep coming to this group. And I would say things like, look, I can't control you, but I'm going to keep coming here. And as Carol said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. And then you don't have to like do much more than that, ma'am. I'll tell you the truth. You don't have to do much more than that. You will not figure it out on the car ride home. Is this his first time that so he's going to have to start figuring some of that out.
Well, I mean, all they're doing is drugging him right now.
Well, no, the recovery starts outside of the institution.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll start, I would recommend you bring him here Friday. And he'll meet some people here, that kind of thing. They're also going to give him some information. Which detox is he in?
Mercer in Charlotte?
Oh, he's in Charlotte. Are you from Charlotte?
No.
Oh, okay.
My insurance.
Okay,
believe
send
it
him
or
up
not,
there.
Nothing in South Carolina.
No, believe me, I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. It's awful. And so,
I mean, there's nothing for alcoholism
yeah,
here.
yeah. So, he'll come down and you get him here on Friday, that kind of thing. And then the idea would be that he would start working on that. That's exactly how we would want it to go down with your husband too. Like when you leave here tonight, you don't have to figure it out. Yes.
But is there a point okay, he's been in, and I don't want to scare anybody, he's been in 7 different
Yeah.
rehabs. And he's destroyed my houses and my cars.
Yes, there is a point.
Is there a point where
Yes.
you go, I gotta go?
Yes. Yes.
I'm trying not to kill him. I mean.
Well, and we definitely don't want that. Okay, that's not part of the recovery plan. Absolutely, 100%. Her question was, is there a point in time when you're just done? And that is absolutely the case, guys. And if you're asking yourself that question, you're probably getting close to it. And you have to, unfortunately, where substance use is concerned, sometimes you have to call the authorities. People aren't in a reasonable state of mind, and you have to call, sometimes, you got to call the police on your own loved one. I had to hospitalize my daughter, It was very uncomfortable. It was nothing fun about that at all, but remember, you can't talk anybody into anything, right? So.
But you can
But is
get
there-
them removed from the situation.
You
But
can
is
get,
there a point where you walk away?
Yes.
And say.
yeah, whatever works for you, you get out, yeah. Yep. That's what happened to me.
Your safety is a concern.
Yes.
Safety is concerned, physical safety, emotional safety, stress level, mental health, all of the above. And how do you know whether you're at that point? How do you know whether you're at the point of no return, or I got to kind of like remove myself in this situation? Linda?
I just think you know it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just
In your
know
soul.
it.
Yeah,
I don't know how you get there,
yeah,
but things happen and things happen and things happen, and then just something happens and you just know you're there.
yeah.
It's like you're broke.
Hold on a second. I want to. So, Linda just got real political on us there. You hear that? Oh.
I did.
Yeah, you did. You're absolutely right. But here's what I would say. And if you notice something, if you've been coming to the group for a long time, I hope you're noticing that I'm talking a little bit different about this stuff. Because at Favor, we're always like, you don't have to ask a person to leave. It's a personal journey, and I firmly believe that. But I also don't want to sell you short. If you are saying to yourself, maybe I should get out, you should get out. That little voice in your head, listen to it. Listen to it. If you're saying to yourself, maybe it's time for so-and-so to leave, listen to that. That's that little voice in your head, kind of like checking in with you. Honor it. Maybe ask some questions, that kind of thing. Start paying attention to that. Kathy, you were going to say something, then we'll jump back there. Did you have your hand up?
I guess I was thinking about, you just know it, but sometimes if you're in an abusive situation, it takes you a little bit longer to figure it out. I don't mean
Yeah.
you, I'm just saying in general.
Also, there's also a lot of factors involved. I mean, let's get real about this. There's knowing it and knowing you should do something, but there's also the actual logistics of how do you do it. How do you do the finances? How do you actually logistically do it? Sometimes with parents and kids, there are situations where they have to actually literally go get a notice to quit, and they have to get people evicted. So you also have the whole how do I actually get it done in terms of safety and where am I at with my emotional safety and my mental safety and everything like that. So, but getting to the point where you're ready to do it, a lot of that has to do with the little voice in your head.
And then you have to make a plan.
Then you got to make a plan, and again, you got to it's very hard to go from this meeting to going home, and just have everything lined up and ready to go with that. You want to plan that out. Yes.
I was just gonna say that I mean, everybody's here probably because they have a loved one here that they love and care a lot about, but we all, and this is something I had to learn on my own too, but we are all important in our own right, and none of us deserve to be, we can put up with it for a while, but nobody deserves to live with any kind of torment day after day after year after year. So eventually, I think you gotta realize that you are important yourself.
Yes.
And, that's
Yeah.
important to me.
And if I can add something to that, what was that? This is like a freaking group, man. It's a weird night, Joni. I come in here late. I don't know what I'm doing, and then all I'm not cool with this at all.
Must have been true what I was saying.
Yeah. What were you saying? Because
I was just saying that each of the family members in here are important. We got to remember, we love our person, but we can't let them destroy us.
That's right. Here's the other thing about it. So here's the other part of the equation. When you start to make changes in your own behavior and you start to set boundaries, and you got to remember, boundaries also aren't always you have to leave. It could have a lot of different tones. When you start to change your behavior, you start to set boundaries, you start to allow the person to experience consequences, you actually increase the likelihood that they're going to get better. So that's the other part of the equation. Not only are you taking care of yourself, you're also getting to a point where that's whenever people start to make different decisions because they're not thinking clearly. If we go back to this idea, you can't talk a person who's in active addiction into making a different decision because they're not thinking clearly. You start to set boundaries, you start taking care of yourself. You do it for yourself, but then the side effect is it's really the only thing that can start making the person's life different. But you're absolutely right. No one in this room. Yes, sir.
Now, what if the kids are brought into it, like the parents are arguing and whatnot, and then they ask for the child to go?
So, you mean like your mom would ask? Or your dad? Yeah. So that's not good. You want to try to stay out of it. It's going to be hard, though. You want to try to stay out of it. You guys need to keep coming to group, and we also are going to get you someone to talk to because you want to start changing that as well. But you can't, at 14, you can't resolve that situation. It's so good you have your kids here tonight.
Wow.
It's so good that you got your kids here. It's a difference-making move. It really is, because people don't talk about this, and then what happens is kids have questions, and they don't know what to do, and it's really wonderful that you have your kids here. So it's not going to make the situation any easier right away, but this is how you start, and then. But I would try to move myself out of that as much as possible, and then as you start to figure out what you're going to do, then you can kind of help them as well. we have a phone number I'm going to get you hooked up with tonight that can help you with some of those questions. Yes.
I heard something last weekend that was the most useful thing when I was thinking about my son when he was really in bad shape and I was thinking he was demon possessed.
Yeah.
It was that the person you love is still in there, but he's on the back of a bus being driven by a crazy person.
Yeah. Well, you know, the other thing, like when they do the intervention model that I was trained in, what she says is that it's like an alien came down and sucked their brain out and put an addictive brain in there, and it's not the same person, you know.
But that person is still there. That was important for me to
Yeah.
know, that person was still there.
Yeah. But go back to this idea of honoring yourself and taking care of yourself and setting boundaries. I mean, you're allowed to live a good life. You're allowed to, you know, you don't have to be subject to abuse. You don't have to be subject to verbal abuse, that kind of stuff. It's not good. It's not going to actually like solve the problem for the person you're worried about. All right, so we got about 20 minutes. I want to move into how do you take care of yourself type stuff. And we're going to talk about positive psychology. We've talked about it here before. We're going to talk about some of the exercises, pass on some different things, and try to encourage you guys to also share some stuff on how you take care of yourself. Because what you have when you're dealing with family recovery, you have kind of like two different things, two different areas that we talk a lot about. One is the practical stuff, the logistical stuff. Should I ask him to leave? Should I kick him out? How do I do that? You know, I have a right to my own house. I have a right to my own privacy. I have a right to my own peace of mind. That's one thing, right? And then the second thing is, how do I deal with the stress and the anxiety and the fear and the discomfort that comes along with everything? That end of it. And this is where there's a lot of different ways, but at Favor Greenville, we talk about this discipline or this idea called positive psychology. And so positive psychology is designed to help improve people's response to tough situations, but also just help you deal with stress in general. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before. Have we gone over some of the positive psychology stuff in here? That there's actually a formula for happiness. And so if you talk to, let me tell you the story real quick around positive psychology. So the positive psychology is founded in 1993 by a person named Martin Seligman. Seligman at the time was the president of the APA, the American Psychological Association. He was a teacher at Penn, and in his duties, he pretty much had a good gig, man. He drove around the country. His kids would go with him. He was speaking a lot of places. He was a published author. He had financial success. So he was outside, it looked really good, and he wasn't depressed. He didn't have clinical depression, but he was just grumpy as hell. Do you guys ever know anybody who's just grumpy? Not mean, but grumpy. Okay, so that was Seligman. He was grumpy. So the story goes, one day he's out. One of his hobbies was weeding the garden. So he's out there, he's weeding the garden, and he's putting these weeds into a nice, neat pile behind him while he weeds the garden. And his 5-year-old daughter, and if you've ever had a 5-year-old daughter, you know this is how they roll. She's grabbing these weeds and throwing them up in the air and like letting them come down in her hair, because that's just how you roll whenever you're 5 years old. I can just picture my daughter doing that. All right, and so he turns around and he says to her, "What are you doing?" And he scolds her, and he yells at her, and she starts crying, and he feels horrible, and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, honey," and stuff, and she says, Okay, Daddy. And she said, "But Daddy, do you remember when you made me give up my blankie?" She had like a security blanket. He said, "Yes, honey, I remember when I made you give up your blankie." And she said, "If I can give up my blankie, you can give up your grumpy." So he's a psychologist with access to all the information that's out there. So he goes in and he accesses all the scientific databases, and he goes to all the different information, and he plugs in like, how do you get less grumpy? How do you get more happy? Here's what he found. There were only 2 articles on happiness in all the psychological literature. There were over 20,000 articles on how do you help somebody who was depressed. So what he quickly realized was there really was nothing for a person who just said, "My life isn't really where I want it to be. I got all these things going on. You know, I'm not at a 0, but I'm only at a 4. I'd like to get myself up to a 7. Or maybe I'm at a 3 and I'd like to get myself up to a 5. There were a lot of things to do if a person was at a 0. medication, cognitive behavioral therapy, all kinds of stuff, but nothing to do that just helps a person get happy. So he's the president of the American Psychological Association. He has all kinds of resources that the rest of us don't. He says, let's look at this and let's study it. So the first thing they do is they start traveling around the world. This takes 7 years. It's probably up to about the year 2000 when they finally start to publish some stuff. He starts flying around the world, doing surveys, starting to figure out who's happy, and what he finds out is there are actually like universal human characteristics around happiness, whether it's the United States of America, or he interviewed people who were in the caste system in India, the untouchables. Believe it or not, there are people who are in the untouchable class that are happier than people in America. Do you guys know what the untouchable class is? It's a caste system in India. It's different than our social stratus, where we can climb a ladder. They can never leave. Their job is to clean the sewers. So when you're born into that level, you stay there forever. But there are people there that are happy. And what he found was that there's actually a formula for happiness. And here's how it goes. 50% is what's called the set point. You're born with. So half of it is how you're born. It is your personality. It is your temperament. It is your demeanor. How many people here have just known somebody who was just happy as hell no matter what was going on? You know what I mean? Like they're just, makes you wonder what they're smoking, right? And how many people have known somebody who are just kind of grumpy no matter what's going on? So that is part of it. And this is where you guys aren't going to buy it. 10% of happiness is the person's circumstance. Whether health conditions, loved ones' health conditions. Are you following me? Only 10. That's what everyone says when I say this to them. They think they're full of crap. But when you study it across human beings, that the circumstance, you are happier when things are going better, but overall, it's only about 10% of the pie. What tends to happen is that whenever you go through a really good event, so circumstances are also good things. When you go to a really good event, you tend to get high and come back down relatively quickly. Okay? And then if you go through a really bad event, if you allow yourself, you will come back up. Maybe not as quickly, but you get that? So how they know that is, it's very interesting. They studied lottery winners, and they studied people who were suddenly disabled in a car accident. And what they found was lottery winners went up and then came back down really quickly, and people who became paraplegic went down and came back up. Okay, overall, you got to understand this is a research process. This isn't any one person. 40% of your happiness is 100% in your control. Now, you could say that's only 40%, but that's still 40%. Some people call it thoughts and actions. Other people call it attitude, response to situations. I can tell some people aren't buying this, but now this doesn't mean if you're dealing with a crisis in any given moment, you're not going to be unhappy. This means overall. You follow me? Like, you guys know how we have crisis with our kids, we have crisis, any kind of health crisis. In that moment, you're going to be happy. But 2 weeks later, a month later, overall, you have control over this. And this is what positive psychology looks to influence: thoughts and actions and attitude, okay? Another way to think of it is good life, engaged life, meaningful life. And, okay, the first example, we talked about this already. I think you go home and you examine this and examine where you're at in your life. Here are 5 universal qualities. It isn't like you have to have 20% in each area, but if you're lacking in any one area, you will probably have a worse attitude, and you'll probably be a little bit unhappy. The first one is this is PERMA. P stands for pleasure. You got to have some fun. This is another area when I say it to family groups where people look at me like they want to throw something at me. When was the last time you just did something fun for yourself? Not fun like this group fun. I know this is outstanding. But I'm talking like, fun. Go to a movie. Go do an activity that it's not a task, it's not part of work, it's not part of your recovery plan, you just go have some fun. So that's the P. The second one is engagement. Do you have any hobbies? And sometimes for some people it happens at work, but is there anything in your life when you're doing it, you're 100% engaged? They call that the flow state. And what happens is you know whether or not you're in the flow state because time flies. So I'm very fortunate. For me, without question, my work is my engagement. I can't believe it's 10 till 8. I literally can't believe it's 10 till 8. And this was a freaky group right from the jump. I came in late, you know, and there's stuff going on here tonight, but I can't believe it's almost 10 till 8. So what happens is I'm in a zone, time goes by, not only am I having a good experience now, I'll have a payoff after I leave. This group is my buzz now. And so if you don't have that at work, you got to find something. And again, maybe you have to take up a hobby. One of the things that you can do that definitely will get you in the flow state is free climbing. Go climb a mountain. All you're going to do is concentrate on where you're climbing. Because that's the idea. You want to be 100% absorbed. The R stands for relationships. Quality over quantity. Do you have people in your life who lift you up? And do you have people in your life who tear you down? What would you want to do? Increase the people who lift you up, minimize the people who tear you down. The M stands for meaning. For a lot of us, that's a spiritual orientation, that's God, that type of thing, but it doesn't have to be that. It can also be, do you feel like do you have a purpose in life? There's a book called Man's Search for Meaning, written by Viktor Frankl. Okay, and Viktor Frankl is a psychiatrist, and the first part of the book is all about his experience in Auschwitz and other concentration camps during the Holocaust. And what he observed is that there were, the people who survived the Holocaust, it wasn't the people, there were actually Jews who were in the concentration camps who were ingratiated to the guards, and they got treated differently. They got more food. They actually comparatively didn't have a bad life. Those folks didn't make it. They died. And the ones that were incredibly pessimistic died. The ones who lived were the ones that were able to create meaning out of their life in the middle of suffering. So that was in a concentration camp. So this would tap into what, if you're going through the worst of times, can you create meaning in it? It's meaning in life, what is my purpose? It's meaning in love. Do I have those type of relationships? And then the biggest one, and the thing that we got to deal with, guys, if you're in this group, is meaning in suffering. How can you find a greater purpose for what you're going through? Are you able to, and if you're early in this process, you won't, but are you able to say to yourself things like, maybe someday I'm going to pass this on, or maybe there's something about this that there's a lesson. You try to find a greater meaning. And then the A stands for your response to any situation. You can be pessimistic or optimistic. And those things, so the instruction would be, look at your life, and if there's any area that's glaring, address it. For you guys, it probably is something like that. Maybe you're not doing anything fun. But if there's any area that's just where you're like, well, I never thought of that. Or we haven't done anything fun. I can't remember the last time I laughed. Go get on it. Do something different. That's your assignment between now and next week. All right. 3 good things we have talked about in here. We will remind you one more time. Every day, at the end of the day, write down 3 good things that happened to you that day. The human brain is conditioned to notice negative things. It's called Teflon brain versus Velcro brain. And the idea is that the negative sticks and the positive goes away. So if you make sure you're looking for positive things. Now, this isn't a gratitude list. This isn't like, I'm healthy, we have a house to live in. These are very specific good things that went on during the day. So you came to this group tonight, you thought it was going to suck, but it went a lot better than you thought. You were late for a meeting and you didn't catch a red light, you got there on time. My favorite is, and this happened to me when I was in Charleston. I was in Charleston giving a speech this weekend. This happened when I was at Target. Oh, so I go to Charleston without anything, man. I was in Michigan. I was like, you guys I'm about to go on a tangent, just a heads up. So I'm in Michigan. I'm literally right on the Canadian border. Shout out to the people from Families Against Narcotics. They're watching tonight. And I was given a talk at their organization up there. And so I go, and the plane didn't come. The plane was broken down. I was delayed several days. It was 75 degrees below zero, all this stuff. So I go from there to Charleston, but I forget all my stuff. I don't even have my dress shoes or anything like that. So I got to go to Target to buy dress shoes. And I'm standing in line, and there are 10 people in front of me, right? And what happens? Dude opens up the line and says, I'll take next person. I go from being number 10 in line to number 1 in line. That would be an example of a good thing. And so here's the idea. As you do that, as you notice good things and you give yourself this assignment, what happens is your brain starts saying, I got to notice good things. I have an assignment. And then you'll start catching that through the course of the day. And it's all about rewiring your brain. It's kind of like refiring it, neural pathways. Have we talked about the free 3? Go outside, listen to music, and laugh. And you got to do these things. You got to commit to these things. Whenever I do these at the corporate programs that I work with, we ask people to commit for 30 days to these 2 interventions. 3 good things and the free 3. We ask people to commit to those for 30 days and to see if they feel like it's making a difference. Now, it's not objective. It's not like blood pressure where I can measure where you started off here and now you're down here. You know, you'd have to be honest with yourself. It's not going to work if you do it one time. But here's the flip side of it. The flip side of it would be, don't even try anything different. Keep doing what you're doing. If what you're doing is working, you're going to be fine. But if what you're not doing, guys, you are going to suffer. Understand that this will take a toll on you, regardless what goes on with your loved one. And I'm not saying that to try to be dramatic, and I'm not saying that to try to be hyperbolic. It's true. We know that stress, anxiety, worry, those type of things are directly related to, some people say 70, 75 different types of serious health conditions. How about sleep? Anybody here ever go without sleep? How does that feel? You know, do that a couple days in a row. Stress, blood pressure, all these different types of things. You hear people say take care of yourself, and sometimes we sort of like, you know, we kind of like laugh it off or we shrug it off, and we know people are here because you also want to find out how to help your loved one. But if you don't take care of yourself, all the cliches are true, guys. You know, you're going to go down with the ship, and then there's nothing good going to happen. Anybody else have any other suggestions in terms of taking care of yourself? We got about 2 minutes, but does anybody else have any other routines or any other things that they would share with the group that they engage in? Anyone? All right, here's a couple more then. Prayer and meditation. Regardless of what your belief system is or where you're at with it, getting up in the morning with enough time to kind of get into some routine, or praying at night and kind of thinking your way through that, and taking time to sort of slow down. Meditation in the sense of breathing. I don't know this to be the case myself, but allegedly yoga helps. Apparently you can buy scented candles. There's this thing called aromatherapy, right? You go in and get like cinnamon toast crunch candle and huff that thing all night. And then, you know, so whatever it is, it's not meant to be therapy. It's whatever you do to take care of yourself. Really, really think about that and kind of like devote some time and energy to that. All right, a couple things. I do want to say, I want to say hi to the folks in Michigan that I met. I also want to say hi to the folks in Spartanburg and Anderson, guys. We're streaming this out to other sites that we're involved with. We have a program in Anderson, South Carolina, and we also have a program in Spartanburg. And some of the folks that I've met on my journeys also, we want to be able to get this out. So the Favor Greenville message, guys, is it's nationwide, man. It's the real deal, and people are very positive about it. So keep coming back here. Next week we will have a regular kind of open share. We sort of did that tonight, but it won't be a lecture format. And then the following week we'll be back for a lecture. And I want to get you a card with some information. If anybody else needs any other information on how to access additional support, we have a hotline that I'll get you the card for it right now. Otherwise, if we can get a moment, we're going to close this thing with the Serenity Prayer. If I can get a moment of silence for those still suffering and for the family members brought into this no choice of their own, followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, guys, thank you very much.